Right, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through I'm going to give you a little introduction to assignment 4. It's going to be a little bit more in depth than the video I did last time that introduced you to assignments 3 and 4. And I'm going to go over your summer holidays homework that you need to be working on over the next few weeks or so. So in this video, we're going to recap on assignment 4. I'm going to give you some very, very brief introductions to the 4 main elements of this assignment, which is screen printing, Dada, Chicago, and poster design elements. And then I'm going to take you through the tasks that you need to be doing over the summer holidays. It's probably not going to be as long and in depth as the one on lino printing, because I'm not going to take you through any specific techniques, but there's still quite a lot that you need for your homework in this video. So just as a bit of a recap on the actual scenario itself, every year, if you don't know, we do a production through the Performing Arts Department, who do a big show, usually around about April, May time. So you are going to make some posters to advertise that show. You're going to make a run of posters, all of the same design, and the production this year is going to be Chicago, okay, which if you've not heard of that, it's a very, very famous musical set in the 1920s, which I'll go over in a bit more detail in a bit. So we are going to be looking at the style of Chicago. We're going to be looking at screen printing and the techniques that are involved in the screen printing process. And we're going to put all that together to make some really cool designs for a poster campaign. Your poster is obviously going to be, intending to advertise the show. So it's going to include things like the title, the date, the time, the price, all that stuff on there. And in addition to that, it also needs to make sure it's got plenty of imagery in there that is representing the show, so people know that it's about Chicago, because it has got quite a unique visual style that we will go and look at in a bit. So you need to produce a print run of at least 10 posters. This is the same as the lino cut project as well. It's 10 of the same poster, not 10 different ones. You can do 10 different ones if you want, but it's going to give you a lot more work to do. We're going to be using screen printing to make these posters, and like I said before, it's got to follow the stylistic conventions of screen print posters and also the aesthetic style of Chicago as well. What we also need to do for this assignment is look at a particular art style and sort of incorporate that art style into your posters as well. So we're going to look at a movement called Dada, which some of you do art, you might have heard of that before. It's quite a unique, interesting art movement. It's got some very surrealist, expressionist imagery, which we're going to use for our design style as well. So hopefully it might look quite cool. The audience for these posters and the show itself is pretty much going to be the same as your lino cut cards that you're making for assignment 3. TRC students, staff, parents, carers, and people in the local area as well, because they're the people who can buy tickets to go and see the show. So your audience is pretty much going to be the same, so there's no real difference for that bit. Yeah, I've been through this, okay, so what you need to make sure you understand for this assignment is screen printing, the actual process of it, how it's done, the aesthetic style of Chicago, and the style of the Dada movement as well, okay? And you're going to put all these things together into your posters. There'll be quite a few examples of posters that we've made over the last couple of years or so on this PowerPoint as well. Okay, now I'm not going to take you through the actual process of screen printing because it is very, very tricky and very complicated to explain verbally. It's much, much easier for me to go through it by showing it you. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the actual process of it yet, so don't worry about that for now. But screen printing as a printing technique has been around for a long time. Pretty sure it's been around for over 1,000 years, and it started primarily in Asia and China mainly, and then came across to more Western audiences a little bit later on, probably through colonial times and stuff like that. But the basic principle of screen printing is the idea that ink is dragged through a very fine silk mesh wire, and then the ink is pushed through the wire, which is then transferred onto a surface. It sounds quite complicated, but what I'm going to do in a minute is I'll show you a little video that the art department has made to show you the process, just to give you somewhat of an idea of what it involves. Nowadays, it's often used to make posters, but also t-shirts as well. The majority of screen printing is done digitally, but there are still examples of handmade screen printing as well, which is what you're going to be doing. So this is a little video that the art department has made that highlights the screen printing process. You don't need to make notes or anything like that, but this is just to give you an idea of how complex the actual process is. So you can see straight away that there is a lot more going into screen printing than there is line-up printing. It's not really something you can do at home. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with the art department and using some of their equipment in order to make our posters, because it isn't really anything we can do some bits of it in the media department, but not all of it. Okay, so we need to use their special exposure machines. Okay, they're not our screens, but they're kept over in the art department. So it isn't something that we're going to be able to do in class, and it is quite a long process, but it can produce some really, really cool, really interesting results. So it is something that I think, is going to take a bit of time to get right, and we will do plenty of opportunities to practice and get it right. Some of you who do art, you will have done this before, so hopefully I'll be looking for you guys to help as well. Okay, so you'll see once this example's finished that some of the designs can be really, really interesting and really, really cool. So hopefully, we can use this technique to make some really nice, really stylish results. Okay, it is quite complicated, and there is a knack to it. All right, there is a technique to it. It's not really the kind of thing that you can master after one attempt. Okay, but if I can learn to do it, anyone can do it. So you can see there, that's a really cool, interesting design, and that's the kind of thing we're going to be doing for our posters. Okay, right. Oops, playing again. Okay, so moving on, Chicago. Now, some of you might have heard of Chicago before. If you haven't, it's a very, very famous musical. All right, and it's based on a play from the 1920s. And it was also made into a Hollywood musical in the early 2000s, I think, which won a fair few Oscars. Obviously, you might have guessed it's based in Chicago, obviously. And the basic narrative premise of Chicago is that of a performer who is arrested for murder, and it's about her time in jail and subsequent trial after that. Obviously, there's a bit more to it than that, but as a very basic overview of the narrative, that is pretty much what it's about. Okay, it was written by Bob Fosse, I believe. I think that's the original play. I think that's the original play, actually, sorry. No, the original musical was written by John Kander and Fred Ebb, and it was based on this is the original play. One of the things that Chicago is well known for is its aesthetic style. Now, you can see straight away from the imagery that you can see on screen that it's pretty obvious what its style is. You see a lot of reds, you see a lot of black colours, you also see a lot of gold colours as well, okay? It's very heavily influenced by the Great Gatsby era, given that it's set in the 1920s. So you get a lot of reds, you get a lot of golds. Obviously, gold connotes wealth, it connotes importance, okay? You also get a lot of silhouetted imagery as well. This is from one of the most famous musical numbers in the show called Cell Block Tango, where you get all these black silhouettes of the performers and the singers in the jail cell and the red lights behind them. So you can see how this early example that I showed you before was heavily influenced by the Cell Block Tango number. Okay, so that's the kind of thing we want to be looking at for the aesthetic style of Chicago. Costumes as well, it's also very famous for the costumes it has. You've got a lot of 1920s inspired dresses, like the famous flapper dresses, which have like the weird sort of sparkly tassels at the bottom. Fedora hats, like this one here you see here. The props of the old-fashioned revolver guns as well. I can't remember what the exact make and model is, but I think Rob knows and he'll tell you. The old cigarettes on the old cigarette holders is also very famous. Feather headbands as well. Okay, the musical is renowned for this particular aesthetic. Okay, it's one of the things it's most well known for, and it's very, very influential in terms of, other sort of media products that are based around that particular time. Now, it's really, really important that you understand the aesthetic style of Chicago, because obviously you need to represent that in your posters, okay? Audiences need to know that your poster is advertised in Chicago, and one of the things that will do that is by representing that style, because people associate this style with Chicago, and they'll go, oh, I recognise that, so look, that must be Chicago. Okay, so it's really, really important for your audiences that you represent that style in your posters. So you probably, I'm expecting you to, use a lot of reds, a lot of blacks, a lot of gold colours, silhouettes, that sort of stuff. Okay, because it's representative of the show. Now, we also need to look at a particular art movement to inspire you for your posters. If you look on the actual assessment criteria, you've got to have some sort of artistic influence in your posters. So it's easier for us to look at one particular art movement. The one we're going to look at is called Dada. Now again, some of you might have heard of this before, especially those of you who do art. It is quite a well-known movement. It is quite striking in the way that it looks, okay? So Dada was a very avant-garde movement that emerged around about the 1920s. It was very heavily influenced by things like futurism, cubism, okay, constructivism as well. And the basic premise of the Dada movement was to try and break away from the typical realist movements of art. Most of the art prior to the Dada movement was what we call realist, which is where it was designed to represent truth. It was there to represent, what we would normally expect to see. However, Dada wanted to move away from that. Okay, it wanted to challenge those expectations. Okay, and it wanted to provoke responses from audiences as well. Okay, it wanted them to be challenged by it. Okay, it wanted them to feel, almost, I suppose, uncomfortable. You could always say for something like that as well, because it did things that audiences weren't used to. Okay, there wasn't that sort of comfortable reassurance with the normal art style that was expected at that time. Okay, it was also influenced or served, as an anti-war, anti-capitalist movements as well. And there's a lot of examples of far left-wing politics like communism that used the Dada movement for its propaganda, essentially. So it's quite provocative in the techniques that it used. It was originally, given the fact that it was emerged in the 1920s, it was produced using a lot of things like cuttings from newspapers and leaflets. So you will see a lot of old newspaper font styles as well in there. Okay, and then the images that they've taken from these newspapers or leaflets or whatever would be radically altered and radically changed, and the original meaning behind the original image was changed into something more challenging, and that was the idea behind it, I suppose. So if you look at something like this image here, I think this is of Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a famous German philosopher. I might be wrong with that. You can see that by adding these images to it, they've radically changed what the original intended meaning behind this image was into something that is more evocative, more provocative, more challenging in a way. The main sort of style of Dada is, obviously you can see it a lot in the images, a lot of black and white old-fashioned images given the time and the era that it was made, but also the actual text as well and the typographies that it used. Given the fact that that a lot of the text was cut out from newspapers and prints and leaflets, there was a lot of mismatching of text. There was a lot of altering sizes of text in the same word. So you look at some directions as well. So you look at this Dada here. You've got the D here in black, the A in white, but it's also been flipped 90 degrees anti-clockwise. You've got an exclamation mark right bang in the middle there, and these 10th of May here. Look at the size of the 10 there, the size of the M and the A and the Y. Okay, it's all mismatched, but it's deliberately mismatched. Okay, so that's one of the common features of Dada. You get the mismatching of the text, okay? You almost get sort of an uncomfortable structure where it doesn't quite make sense, okay? But it makes sense enough for you to be able to read it, just enough, if that makes sense. You also obviously got a lot of grayscale images, given the fact that, again, it was from the 1920s. Block colours as well, okay? And also very limited colour palettes as well. There's not a massive variation of colours on there. So on this one, you've got like, what? Three colours again on here, okay, a couple more on here, but not too many, so they're very limited colour palettes that were used there. Again, a couple of examples of Dada. These are all for an anniversary Dada exhibition from a few years ago, maybe. Some of the most well-known, there's plenty of people who are quite well-known in the Dada movement, but you've got Jean, but I might butcher some of these pronunciations, Johann Badar, Hannah Hock, Raoul Hausmann, Elsa Freitag, Loringhoven. There's quite a few examples of famous Dada artists. There's loads if you do a bit of research. I think if you go on the... I forgot what gallery it is. Never mind. But there's plenty of websites out there that will give you loads of good examples of Dada artists. As well as that, you've got this music video from Franz Ferdinand from a few years ago, which was heavily inspired by the Dada movement. It's also a cracking song, but you can see here that this video, it's heavily reliant on the Dada style for its aesthetic. Look at the direction of the text. It gets even more weird in a minute. I'm going to skip a few bit. There you go. So look at the surrealist images there. They've got all these different shapes and text going in weird directions. Okay, it's really good video to watch, but it's essentially a nice visual representation of the Dada movement there. Okay, that's a good song. So that is a very brief introduction to Dada. I'm not going to spend too long going over that because, you know, it's a massive thing to look at in detail. But we're going to be incorporating the Dada style into our posters. So, we also need to quickly look at some of the various elements of poster design so that you can incorporate the sort of, I suppose you could say, rules of poster design or considerations of poster design into your designs. So, the main purpose of your posters is obviously to promote a product. Okay, that's the be all and end all of it. It's promoting something. Okay, it's trying to, you know, use creative techniques to encourage audiences to interact with whatever product it might be. It might be a movie, it might be a gallery exhibition, it might be, a gig. It could be anything really. Okay, that is the main purpose behind it. It's designed to sell a product. So, first couple of things we need to look at for the elements of poster design is the rule of thirds. Now, we did do a little bit about this for magazines last year, and the rule of thirds is basically the idea that you can split any media product, whether it's a poster, a magazine front page, a scene from a film, into 9 equal sections. Okay, so you've got your left third, centre third, and right third, and you've got your upper third, your mid third, and your lower third. And the basic idea behind it is the middle sections are going to be the more focal points of your poster. So this is where the majority of the key aesthetic style or visually appealing aspects of the poster are going to be. Okay, so you can see how this poster here for Drive, you've got the majority of the title in the middle there, you've got the majority of Ryan Gosling's face there in the middle. That is a really cool poster. I love that poster, and it's a great film as well. If anyone hasn't seen Drive, watch it. It's one of my favourites. But you can see there how all the main sort of focal points of the image, of the poster, are drawn towards the middle of the rule of third of the different sections there. Okay. Same for this King Kong one here. It's a little bit sort of out of the way on the left-hand side there a little bit, but for the majority of it, it's all in these middle sections here. Okay, so the rule of thirds is what you would use to ensure that the most important parts of your poster are going to be the places that draw audiences' attention the most, and that should be around about the middle. The actual layout of your poster is up to you, really, but the things that you might want to consider is whether you want to have a symmetrical layout or an asymmetrical layout. Okay, now really that's up to you, that's your own personal preference really. A symmetrical layout is where you've got a clear sense of symmetry in your poster. So you can see all these 3 examples of posters here, they're very symmetrical, they're very equal. Okay, the space, the images, they're all divided very equally. There's a clear sense of order there, so you've got this guitar design in the middle here with the 2 equal sections. It's almost like a mirror image, isn't it? In fact, all 3 of these are sort of like mirror images. So these are quite sort of very well organised, very neat, very tidy. However, you could always go and do something a bit different if you wanted to, and do something that's a little bit asymmetrical. Okay, asymmetrical is where there isn't a sense of symmetry there. So if you look at this one in the right hand side especially, you've got the image of the the film camera, sorry, the projector in the bottom left hand corner, which is quite small, and then the image of the man with the hat in the top right hand corner is much bigger. So it's not symmetrical, there's an imbalance there. Same with the Rocky one, you've got a small picture of a guy running up some stairs on the top right, and then his silhouette goes bigger and bigger and bigger into the corner, so there's an imbalance there. So you could do something that's asymmetric if you want to, it's completely up to you. Typography is obviously very important as well when it comes to your poster. So when it comes to the typography, we basically mean the fonts. Okay, we're talking about the fonts, the font styles that you use, the size, the direction, the positioning. Before we're talking about the font size, we're going to come back to the font size in a little bit where we talk about visual hierarchy. But fonts are not just there to give the audience information. You need to think carefully about what fonts you use. Obviously they need to be readable, and you don't really want to have, I'd say, any more than 2 different font sizes, font types on there, maybe 3 at a push. But fonts also, in the same way that you might use colours, they should be there to represent something. They should be there to, you know, give the audience meaning or impression behind it. So if you're looking at something like Chicago, you will need to make sure you have a font that is representative of the Chicago style. So you would need something like this. If you were to use something like bloody Comic Sans on there, it wouldn't work because it doesn't represent this style. So fonts, it's important to understand that fonts are not just about, you know, saying words or sentences or whatever. Okay, you need to put serious thought into what fonts you might want to use, whether it's a serif font, sans serif font, display, script font. It's up to you really. Okay, but you need to have a bit of thought going into it. Okay, we'll come back to positioning and sizes of fonts in a little bit, but I want to move on to colours quickly. I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time because you know about colour connotations. Okay, so you need to think about the colours that you're going to use on there. You know, do they provide the right connotations that you want to provide? Obviously, we've already spoken about how Chicago uses a lot of reds, a lot of golds, and a lot of blacks, but you need to understand why they use that. Okay, what are the meanings behind that? What are the connotations behind those colours? Okay, for colours as well, for most poster design elements, you would look at no more than 3 main colours on there. Okay, same for your fonts. Okay, it's sort of like an unwritten rule. You could, if you wanted to, choose some monochromatic colours. A monochromatic colour scheme is where you might just have one particular overriding colour scheme that runs through the entire poster. So you've got this one here, you've got the orange, you've got the red there, and you've got the grey. Now I think these look really nice. I think they work really, really well, not only for Dada, but for screen printing as well. So monochromatic colours, where you use one particular main colour, is something that you could easily do if you wanted to. You also need to make sure that the colours complement each other. Now there's lots of different ways of knowing what colours complement each other, and there will be some resources on the resource pack that I'm going to make for you that explains the different colours and the different colours that complement each other. But some of the basic ones, if you look at the colour wheel here, you can see that the colours that are opposite each other often go quite well with each other, okay, or in equilateral triangles as well, okay. But it's important to understand that certain colours go well with each other, okay, so bear that in mind. Negative space is obviously very important as well, okay. Negative space is any space that isn't really used for anything. So you've got all this red around here, you've got the sort of beige colour around the outside there, and the black around here. Now, negative space is not just there for the sake of it. It's obviously deliberately designed to draw your attention towards a particular element of the poster. So you've got all this red surrounding this image here, which draws your attention towards this image. Okay, same for this one here. You've got all the black space there, which draws your attention towards the apple core in the middle and the 2 faces either side. Okay, so how you use negative space is obviously very important. Okay, even in terms of things like designing your poster. So for example, where the hell is it? There we go. When this person designed this poster, they deliberately left negative space here because they knew this is where they wanted their text to go. So it's also important for the actual, you know, construction of your posters as well, which we'll go into when we actually look at the screen printing process. Okay, last one. This is probably the most important one. Visual hierarchy. Now, hierarchy basically means, a way of structuring what is most important. So if you're at the top of a hierarchy, that means it's more important than something that's in the bottom of a hierarchy. So for visual hierarchy, for terms of poster designs, what that basically means is the size of an object, whether it's text, whether it's an image, the bigger it is, the more important it is. Okay? So, for something like, I don't know, a poster for, like your Chicago posters, the most important thing on there is probably going to be the title. Okay? Chicago. So that will be, taking up a lot of space on the poster. It will be massive. It will probably spread across the entire poster's width. Okay? Because it's important. Alright? That's the thing that's meant to draw the audience in. So to put it really, really simply, the bigger something is on the poster, the more important it is. Okay? It could be an image, it could be text, okay? It could be, well, that's pretty much it, to be honest. Okay? It could be negative space, I suppose. Okay? But the more important it is, so the bigger it is, the more important it is. And that's very, very important, because you need to decide which parts of your poster do you think are more important. Okay? And that's up to you, really. Okay, it's up to you how you interpret the hierarchy of your poster, but you need to think, right, which bits do audiences need to see? Okay, which bits are going to be more important? All right, so if you look at, let's go back and look at that one that I went through at the start. This one, where the hell is it? There. You could look at that and think, right, okay, obviously the Chicago High School Edition logo, that's taking up quite a lot of space, because it's very important, okay? That one's clearly very important. The images as well, obviously the images represent Chicago, so they should be quite important. But things like TRC Presents, that doesn't take up quite as much space. Doesn't need to be as that important. Probably not, okay? This bit here, this little bit where it says 101 at the top, that is the production company who give the rights to make the poster. So you could argue that bit is probably not going to be as important, therefore it can be a little bit smaller. So it's up to you how you interpret that, but it's very, very important that you get the balance right. Okay? So, to put it simply, visual hierarchy, the bigger something is, the more important to the audience it is. Alright? So, over the summer holidays, here are the sections that you need to make sure you've got done by the first day back in September. Okay, it's not as much as the Lionel Cut one. So, where's it gone now? That's the wrong one, you idiot. It's this one here. So, you need to do your introduction section, okay, which again is basically just a little bit of a write-up of the brief. And then you need to do these 4 research tasks. Now, what I've gone through on this video is very, very basic. Okay, I've just given you a very brief overview. Now, you will need to go into more detail than that in your explanations. So I will also put together a resource pack for you to go through. It will contain websites and videos for you to watch, for you to go into more detail when answering some of these questions. Okay, but don't forget though, any resources you use, you've got to reference them, including pictures. Okay, using the Harvard referencing system. All right, you know how to Harvard reference now. I've sent out a video guide of how to do that, but if anyone does want any help to Harvard reference, let me know. So you need to do research on Chicago. There's a few bullet point questions to give you a bit of a prompt. Research on the Dada movement, research on screen printing, and poster design as well. So I've given you loads of resources for this, so I want you to go into more detail. This stuff we won't do until we come back. So it's just task 1 and task 2 I want you to get done. It's not that much, it won't take you very long, but you need to do some more research other than this video as well. Okay, that is pretty much it, to be honest. You know the drill. Any questions, email me. But the minimum I'm expecting, well, you've got to come back in September with all that work done. Okay, I don't want to be playing catch up with people from day one. Okay, you've all got access to do the work at home. You've got the resources that you need. And if you need any help, you can email me and I'll go through things with you. Don't forget though, over the summer holidays, I'm not likely to be on my emails as often as I am right now. I don't get them through to my phone anymore because the app is not working. But I will try my best to email you back as quickly as possible, but don't freak out if I don't email you back within, I don't know, 24 hours. It might take a bit longer than that, okay? but you've got everything you need. If there's any problems, obviously send me an email, but that's pretty much it. Okay, so see you in a bit.